Paisley's industrial past is well known. The town that Thread built, as a recent documentary called it. Paisley pattern is found all over the world, and some of the buildings in which it was created are still visible to this day. Members of the local Camcorder club and a young filmmaker set out to learn more about Paisley's industrial past. What was it like for the people operating the machinery? How could a town that was once so financially booming slowly slide into unemployment? Did the result influence the community spirit of Paisley? We speak to Catherine Mitchell of Smallshot Cottages.
My name is Kath Mitchell and I'm the president of the Old Paisley Society, who own and run Smallshot Cottages. There would only really be about 2 working in here, unless this one was working. I mean, there was hundreds and hundreds of weavers back in the day when it was really, really popular. Now at the cottages, we are very lucky to have some genuine Paisley shawls. The Paisley pattern has always been popular. This one, you can see the pine cone, which is in all the Paisley patterns. And this one is a kirking shawl because it has the white inset.
In addition to Catherine, we speak to Harry Green. Harry worked for Coates internationally for 34 years in various roles and places within the mills.
I was 18 and I was going into the forces. Nobody wanted us, and this applied to everybody of my age at that time. Eventually this chap in Coates said that Coates was employing people and guaranteed them a job after national service. So I applied for Coates. And they tried to put us off. They said you'd be on double shift in the mills, 6 to 2 one week, 2 to 10 the next week. We said that's all right, we worked 3 shifts in the army. So that kiboshed that one. So we came down to the mills and started our training as trainee foreman. And I ended up in the spinning mill, number 1 spinning mill, then moved to number 2 spinning mill.
The textile industry was not the only industry in the Renfrewshire area. Paper mills also added to the local industry. Charlie Murray worked in various paper mills across the UK before life brought him to Smith & Maclaurin in Renfrewshire.
A pal worked in the paper mill, right? And the paper trade was cyclical. It was now in a revival stage and they were starting people. And he went up to the office, the Time office, and says, blah, 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 I'm Charlie, I'm looking for a job, etc., etc. Start 12 o'clock Sunday night.
My name's Clark Wallace and I'm a volunteer worker at the Thread Mill Museum. What happened was a cheese, if you can imagine a cheese is one of these, you can see it looks like a cheese, they call that thread a cheese. A cheese would be sat on here, it would come up through here and fed through, and there are grooves in that wheel, and the thread would go through the grooves, the cone comes down, gets located between the centres, and the thread goes backwards and forwards and goes on like that. It then drops the cone when it's reached its point where it's supposed to go, and it lets it go. There's a lever here which catches the thread, holds the thread and feeds it on to the next. This machine here manufactures ring travellers. Can I maybe show you them? These are ring travellers. Back in the day, they weren't made from plastic. They were made from wire. And the wire drum would sit on here, would feed through these 2 loops and come in. And this to me is an amazing piece of machinery. This I think would be the handle for setting. It would be a belt drive driven off of this part here. And there it goes. That's it. That's it in operation now. And what you can see here is there's a radius in here and a wee spigot. And these 2 crimps, that's what they are, they're no blades, these are 2 crimps. So between the radius and the spigot and these 2 crimps, it would manufacture that shape. This is the guillotine blade, that would chop it and it would fall into a pan.
When we started in the mill, it was what they called training with Mary. Mary was a girl in the machine, and you went and stood with her and watched her. And then gradually you started doing what she was doing until you got up to her speed, piecework speed as we called it. Then you passed on to another one, and that was it. I went down to anchor and learned gassing, and that's where the threads pass through the peak of the cone of the flame, which takes off the hair on the thread and makes it very glossy. Progressed on, went through all the twisting. The cotton bale, as it came from abroad, the raw cotton, spun into yarn, which left the spinning mill and went to the winding department, made into cheeses, ready to go to the twisting machines. They were made into either 2, 3 or 4 ply threads. The threads were then put into cheeses for the dye works. The biggest eye opener was actually going into the spinning, because you had to go to where they opened the bales. Now these are 500 pound of compressed cotton. It'd be about 5 feet by 2.5 feet by 5 feet again. And you had to burst cast iron bands with a big fireman's axe to open it. And when that splayed open with the pressure, the smell that came out was abroad. It was Africa or India or whatever it was, that smell. The old style machinery required a lot of oiling and greasing. And the machines were running 12, 16 hours. Not continuous, but that was the 2 shifts. And you got the smell of the oil and the grease. And the twisting, you actually greased the rings for the travellers to go round. So the girls were putting grease on the ring, like Vaseline. And you got that smell. That was a different smell. A more kind of scented smell compared with the others. And because of all the bearings and gears that they had, there were tin plates under the machines which catch the drips. And they only get cleaned once a week. So as the week went on, the smell got stronger. Then when you opened the gearing ends to change wheels or anything like that, you get the full flavour of the month, shall we say.
Once the machine started, the paper making machine, right, it doesn't stop. It just keeps running. You've got the bit at the end here where the beaters are, and they've mashed it up. It then goes on to a wire, a continual mesh, right? And it goes through a feeder that determines the thickness, and it's all synchronised. It's all got to be that this happens and that happens, right? It gets to the end of that then comes down there, along there, up there, and back again. By the time it gets to the end of that wire, it gets put onto a felt, which carries it into a press, rollers. And the way to get it onto the felt is to pick it up and go, whoops, that's not quite right, but you do, whoops. And even when you're putting it onto the roller, if you accidentally catch your fingers in the roller, it opens and shuts. So even if you could actually get away with, if you were awfully smart, and you see people on watchmen's jobs and everything who've been caught. And technically, the best way to do it is you just triple it in name here and 1, 2, 3, hip, 2. It's like threading needles and all the rest of it. If you've got it, you've got it. If you've not got it, you've got caught in it.
When I went down to anchor the first time, it was Clark's original mills, the Atlantic Pacific, well, demolished years ago. I had a flat, the 4 East, which was ring frames, line driven, and 5 West, which was up in the top corner, where the machines had individual motors. That was the 2 extremes. So I had to learn how to put a leather belt onto the line shaft, and where the knuckles interlocked, there was a piece of pigskin had to go through. And you had to cut that in a certain way, because if you were handling the belt, you had to let the belt slip through your hand to a certain bit before you flicked it. This piece of pigskin sticking out could rip your hand open. Health and safety, but it didn't exist then. I'm talking about early 50s. I had an 8-inch wooden screwdriver, 8-inch blade and wooden handle. And if the machines were running rough, the first thing you went to was the electric motor, because there was a bearing in the motor, there was a bearing on the machine, and there was a clutch in between. And any of the 3 could be making the noise. So you just put the screwdriver onto it and listen, put the wood in your ear, and you could hear the oscillation downstairs. And this trainee come along, he thought it was easy. He put it down, he put it onto the shaft. And of course he banged his head and that was it. He learned the hard way.
When you're weaving a Paisley shawl, it's very intricate. So for every 7th or 8th row, which was called a shot, every time the shuttle went across, they would put in a binding shot to hold the pattern taut, and that was called the small shot. But it was so well done that you couldn't really see it. So when it came to be selling it on to the corks, they refused to pay for the small shot. But as I say, a Paisley shawl would go many metres long. So you can imagine how many shots would be in a Paisley shawl. And it was totally unfair to the weavers. And the weavers were not very happy about that, as you can understand. At the end of the day, the weavers won. So it was a wee bit like the wee man against the big man. It's a wonderful, wonderful loom. I mean, it must be about 200 years old, and it can weave tartan, plaid, check, but not the Paisley pattern. The Paisley pattern needs another type of loom. This other loom that we have that's at the back of me isn't in working order, and we do think that loom was used for not making cloth as such, but for making rugs.
Although the Paisley pattern was very popular, it was also extremely difficult to manufacture. It is believed that only a handful of weaving centres in Europe were up to the task. Unfortunately, with any popular item, the Paisley pattern had also to stand the test of time.
The Paisley shawl started to go into decline. You know what women are like with fashions, and it went out of fashion. So Queen Victoria tried to help by ordering about 12 of them, and whatever the royals wore, other people would follow suit. But eventually it did go out of fashion. But as I said, Paisley pattern still exists. And I bet you most houses have something with Paisley pattern in it.
I saw a bit of slackness coming because you learn to read the press about finance and so forth, and I thought, this mill could be in bother. I'm overqualified just to be in this mill, right? And if they start garnishing, then I would be off. So I come up to Smith McLaurin.
Plus the machines also changed. The old style was 3 lines of rollers, the yarn coming down onto a spindle. The new ones, there were dividers in between each spindle. The rollers were sometimes covered. The packages were bigger. Everything was bigger and faster. So everything changed as the years went on. When I was in Anchor in the old mill, Clark's Mill, I had to telephone about the way we worked up by and the workers. And I sent up a group of workers to see the machines. When I got back there, we can't use the machines. Machines are too big. They couldn't reach the top creel. We found out that the machines were designed in Lancashire for the average height of an English woman, 5'3". A Scots girl average 5'1". That 2 inches meant she couldn't get the cone off the top. We had to make wee steps for them. Simple things, aren't they?
You were content, and it's what you knew. You were safe. There was nothing new ever introduced. It just was the same, right? They brought in new cutters where you could put a reel on and cut at 2 levels, and that was great, right? But the really heavy machinery that you were coating paper with or making paper with stayed forever.
Things had again changed in Paisley. There was a big change around. Some of the mills were cut back in production and size and that kind of thing. And we were going into synthetics. So I got sent down to Payton's and Baldwin's in Darlington and did polyester. The machines increased in size and speed and productions. And a lot of the humans couldn't keep up with it. So they got machines to look after machines. So you got automatic doffing, automatic feeding, automatic repairing, which is now built up into your robots. But that was the start of it in the textiles. But you still needed somebody to push a barrow. During the war, when they realised that we were going to get bombed, Coates spread their factories, wee units all over, Glasgow, Edinburgh, all the rest of it, so that you could get some production out. In Bathgate, they said they were going to start the car factory to take up the miners who had lost their jobs in the shale mines.
And a lot of the pits were shutting down, and all these miners would fit in well.
Then they found out that the medical standard required to work in a car factory failed all the miners. They all had something wrong with them.
When you worked down the pit, you had a task to do. If you were a stripper, you had to hook that, put it onto that conveyor belt and get it to there, right? So you could go like, and then sit and say, oh, Tam, did you see that? Oh, it should have been, right? Because you've got that time, right? And you're working hard. And then you're going, you go into the factory and you're told to sit in your arse or stand where you are and don't move, and see when that happens, and you do that. Aye, less of that, more of that. Because down the pit or in most other places, you've got the communication going all the time, right? Somebody will move from there to there and say, Tam, keep an eye on it for a minute. Tam, would you think, what about last, right? That was lost in the factory.
Coates were supposed to get a bunch of money to modernise their mills, but that money didn't come through because the new textile machines were sent to India. So we were competing against the latest progress with the oldest machines. Some of the machines I had in the spinning were 1910, but they're still turning out a good yarn, but not at the speed of the new machines. So gradually all that took its toll.
A lot of the places that I went down looking for a job, I could see their weaknesses, right? How old was their cutters? How old was their guillotines? How old was their, right? If you got a new machine in there, you would never keep up with it. You just knew that it was going to fold.
But as the machine takes over a machine, the human element will come out. There'll be no knowledge of what the machine does. There'll be no knowledge of how you control it.
Making paper at one time was a craft, right? Men felt things and knew that it was right, right? They tore it and saw the separation of it. That's right, right? Now there's labs where they put it in that does all that and everything, right?
When I came to mills in 52, I think it was, there was 15,000 people in Paisley between Anchor and Fergusley. When the mill shut, I think it was said, as we started to give the workers their notices, our job was to collect, say, a whole flat, you're talking about 50, 60 workers, tell them what was happening. And then the personnel came out and told those individuals that were affected and away they went. And of course the flats were getting smaller. The domestic mill, which is at the Hamels, that was the last one I closed down. That machinery went into the Mile End mill, but it was only about a third of the machines, the rest went for scrap. I told the workers they were redundant in one of the flats, and there was a meeting, and we all got sent for individually, and I was given my notice, and that was it. And I had to take a crowd of visitors round that day.
The Paisley industry has definitely left its mark on the town, the people, and the way other people see Paisley. The industry might be gone, but while making the documentary, we sensed a great deal of community spirit, as well as pride for the industry that once was. people are proud of the way Paisley put itself on the map, the way Paisley was different to other towns. Paisley should be proud of the way it once was, what it is today, and what it will be in the future.